Welcome to this week's episode of Safe Room, your weekly source for horror gaming discussions and proudly part of Bloody Disgusting's Bloody FM podcast network. I'm your host, Jay Krieger.
And I'm the other one, Neil Bolt.
And this week, we're going to chat about all manner of games that were recently announced during the Horror Showcase, which happened not too long ago. And naturally, there will probably be one or two other things that were announced post that show and any number of other game-related showcases that have been going up online and whatnot over the last week or so. And, you know, we've got so much to cover that we figured we would try to just like hit as much as we can and talk about the things that, you know, maybe some of them are on the horizon and some of them are a ways away, but we have lots to chat about this week in terms of, you know, how well horror fans will be eating in the foreseeable future. But before we get to that, a bit of housekeeping due to mostly me or entirely me with scheduling stuff. Horror Bites is going to be delayed this week, so you can expect the second part of our space theme for Horror Bites the following Thursday. Not this Thursday, but the following Thursday. But have no fear if you have not caught up with Horror Bites in a while, that being our Indie Horror Showcase episode drops every Thursday. You can go back and listen to part one of our space theme in which Neil and I both bring a bite-sized indie sci-fi horror game that tackles that subgenre in distinctly unique ways. But yeah, Neil, how are you doing this week?
It's been busy, yeah. I mean, we're at the other end of it now, basically. I think there's only the Nintendo stuff that got announced today that we're going to get announced. But I think there's the odd game that didn't show up that might show up in previews. Notably, Arcane's Blade. After all the sort of where the fuck was it nonsense, does sound. And then it might be cancelled. Actually, no, the people might be seeing it this week, sort of thing. So that was a bit of a roller coaster because I think it wasn't a while ago. I was looking at that thinking it was already cancelled. So.
Yeah, I think that there's always going to be these couple of outliers here and there, but there's no reason we can't cover them in a bit of housekeeping next week when we go back to sort of regular feature magazine style that we've been doing and whatnot. So we can always kind of circle back for anything that kind of slips through the cracks, if you will. But in terms of what we have learned about pretty recently, what was the first thing that kind of stood out to you in terms of upcoming horror games, whether it be things that are slated for a release later this year or, in 2027?
Well, I think it would be remiss of us not to mention the biggest Claire Redfield-shaped elephant in the room. That the Resident Evil Code Veronica remake is real and is now just Resident Evil Veronica. No code, nothing, but got that first teaser, which again, when I go back to the Blade thing, I thought it was Blade because it was in France and like this old lady like being a bit suspicious with biscuits. I mean, the art style didn't look like it, but I was like for a second.
Yeah.
But yeah, like when it revealed itself, I was slightly disappointed just because it wasn't that. But then I was like, oh no, it's Code Veronica, great stuff. I mean, it sounds like they're changing a lot with that game. Not a problem. Like they can do that, but it's some of the problems I suppose we've had with the remakes is that while they've generally been quite good at reimagining games, that they tend to be the ones people call the classics. So they stick a little closer, I guess, to what we were used to. What I looked at it with it being very Claire focused and not really seeing Chris yet in any of this stuff. I mean, the fact that the opening seems to be like a prequel to what you see in the game, which I think in the original game, basically that cutscene of her escaping that facility. Either they've cut that out or they're going well before that sort of thing. But yeah, I thought it was quite a cool way to throw us off the scent by having that sort of going to an apartment and basically getting kidnapped from there sort of thing. Yeah, it's looks like it's doing a few different things. I do wonder if we're going to have a tandem thing again, like we just had with Requiem, where the Chris stuff will maybe sort of be threaded in alongside the Claire story. where he'll be like the more action heavy. The difference is, of course, she is already capable,
Right.
compared to Grace. So will they try two new styles? Because obviously Chris is like supposed to be much more powerful than Leon, and Claire is like a different beast altogether. So yeah, it'd be cool to see what differences they add to it with this one. Yeah, I mean, I should have spotted it was a Resident Evil game straight away because it's like it was very obvious looking at that engine at this point. But yeah, we got a few looks at some locations from there, and classic zombies being back's great, of course, as we know, but we haven't seen the monsters so much yet, which is fine. But we do get to see those nice gold pistols that Steve picks up. Yeah, so looking forward to it. 2027. So yeah, we're getting a Resident Evil again next year.
Mhm.
Just Resident Evil and Silent Hill, constant stream of it now. Like it's it's like being back 30 years ago.
Yeah, you raise an interesting point. I think that from like me personally, this is the thing with like the remakes, right? Is that I think that you can certainly make um, some changes to it, right? We saw that primarily with like Resident Evil 4, right? We saw some pretty big departures in terms of like adding content to the world and fleshing out some sections to give you these new portions of levels that previously were not there and whatnot. And I think that it's interesting that, Code Veronica remake announcement like threw both of us for a loop, myself included, in terms of like that opening, because I was like, oh wait, what is this now? Like that's not how the original opens, that kind of a thing. But
Yeah, and also that I was going to say that the fact they had that joke in there of like it looks like a boulder rolled through here was like
yeah,
in hindsight it was like yeah, should have spotted that straight away.
but I think that for me, like I'm actually okay if the game opens differently because of the fact
Hmm.
that um I think that you're going to have to provide more context for people that are not as hardcore Resi fans that maybe have not gotten to Code Veronica prior to the remake. And so, like, providing some type of new introduction that maybe sheds a little bit more light, is not as immediately dropping you into Claire Redfield's shoes. Um, I'm not really opposed to that. I think that the biggest thing that will be interesting, and it's something you had mentioned, like, I personally hope that we don't get the same type of structure as Requiem, where we're jumping between characters for the very reason you said. Like Claire Redfield is very capable character and whatnot. And at the same time, like I don't know, I think that the sort of like pacing of that game should be retained
Hmm.
from the original. Granted, it's probably going to have a little bit of a more, I don't know, not to say it's going to be more action oriented, but it might be bridging the gap a bit in terms of pacing between like 4 and then something
Yeah.
of the newer camp. But um, I just hope that it allows Claire to truly be the star of it, like she should be. You know,
You know what's also interesting with that tight thing as well? It is basically suggesting that this is now canonically Resident Evil 5. It's like
hmm,
I don't know the way
hmm,
they use the REV sort of thing. Like
yeah,
it's very and the fact they ditched code as well. It's like
mhm,
kind of fascinating that it ended up being that. I think it also proved that a lot of the rumors of like what Requiem was going to be turned out to just be that's bits of this game, like the island stuff. And
mhm,
but yeah, I mean, it's nice to see them keep going and keep this run going. My big wish is that they keep that campy Euro horror thing going, but I
mhm,
do think that's something that we'll lose. Um, I mean, other than that, like to be sort of structured in a way that doesn't mean you lose loads of progress, which we know is not going to happen now because the games have generally tidied that up a lot compared to the old games. But yeah, Code Veronica obviously had some very difficult sections if you didn't know ahead of time what was going to happen, where you could be low on ammo or having to backtrack through areas that were incredibly dangerous with low ammo as well. And yeah, that was never fun if you didn't figure it out. So yeah, these things will be streamlined and it'll be a very different game. I do hope it's closer to Resi 2 remake,
mhm,
maybe. Like
mhm,
I don't mind if it takes like inspiration from like 4, but I think we can do away with the parry stuff
Yeah.
maybe this time because that's Leon's thing.
Hmm.
Like that, I like to see Chris sort of getting into like ruckuses and stuff. That's fine, but I mean he's technically younger Chris who wasn't quite so brawny at that point. So whichever version of Chris there is at this point, if any character has not really maintained their look throughout, it's that guy.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good shout. I personally like they have to retain that Euro horror vibe, which I think, as you mentioned, is probably going to be significantly toned down. But I just hope that like they're able to retain some of that, because that for me was like the most interesting and unique aspect about Code Veronica, and it being as hard as it is. Um, I think will probably be streamlined as well, but also I wonder how much of that is going to kind of like shake off that antiquated feel of trying to like fight against the handling of the original that I certainly encountered when we covered the game for its anniversary, either last year or the year before that. But I really hope that we get to see some of what makes that game such a unique entry stand out, because if anybody that just looks at Code Veronica, they might say like, oh, it just looks like another classic Resi game. But like really for people that have spent a good amount of time with that, just like how unique that is tonally, and also just like stylistically, even if from a surface level glance, you're just kind of like, okay, this kind of looks just like every other early on Resi game. But they really have a chance to retain just how special that entry is, but make it a bit more palatable for modern audiences, myself included.
Yeah, that's it. But with that one out of the way, then,
Yeah.
what else sort of caught your eye the most? I'd say. I mean, there are some obvious contenders, obviously, I think, with this.
Yeah. I suppose for me, like, if we're going to be leading with the tent poles, we might as well get this out of the way. Like Silent Hill Townfall, we finally got to see some straight up gameplay with that being a first person Silent Hill game. And the one aspect of that I think I'm most interested in is also the aspect that, from the jump was the most unique sort of presentation, which was the radio that you have and how you can utilize that to essentially, interact with the else world, if you will. And I'm just curious, like the ways in which that is going to be incorporated into gameplay. I really think that's again like this branching out from exactly what we're used to with the survival Silent Hill games and whatnot, and seeing how Silent Hill Townfall is going to be able to kind of like switch things up a bit, is something that I'm really looking forward to. And I think overall, like I like the presentation of it in terms of like the story aspects and the more cinematic nature of it, and the sort of emphasizing stealth in a way that I am hopeful will sort of do away with what I think has always been a shortcoming, more or less, with the Silent Hill games, which has been like the emphasis on combat, and the combat itself has never for me been a strength of the series outside of like maybe Silent Hill 2 remake aside. Silent Hill F maybe was the first sort of like Silent Hill game I actually enjoyed combat. But here, seeing like, naturally you have a firearm, but you can also like lure enemies out of your way and things like that. Like that is an aspect of it that I think is smart, giving players options, but also like basically putting a band-aid almost on a particularly weak aspect of the franchise. So, and, it coming out in just 3 months' time towards the end of September, that's again just a nice surprise, which has already made fall incredibly busy for us.
I mean, yeah, there's a Capcom game going up against a Konami game like in the same week that like with Onimusha. So yeah, it's like, it's mad. As I pointed out, it's kind of weird that we started the year with a Silent Hill film and a Resident Evil game, and we're getting to September and we'll have a Resident Evil film and a Silent Hill game. And it's like we've never had such times. Like it's ridiculous how we've gone from like, oh yeah, none of this stuff to oh yeah, all of this stuff now.
Just inundating us, which not a bad thing.
Yeah, I mean, having a first-person perspective, obviously, well, I think they did it in the short message. Yeah, and we've had little bits of that here and there. it's going to be interesting to see how that goes along. Having that sort of strong visual style that is its own compared
Yeah.
to F and even Remake 2. Great stuff. And yeah, I mean, Screenburn, who obviously with no code, an interesting developer for this sort of story. And again, we've just had a Silent Hill game set out of the side of America, and now we're in Scotland for this one as well, which is again still wait. The was obviously out on all rigs, so it wasn't quite Scotland, but it had a lot of that, people from that area, and felt like that. I like that about this, this sort of harboury, sort of islandy thing, and
Mm.
I don't know, the fog feels quite natural for it, in terms of this sort of sleepy town. Yeah, I'm. That is like a really big hook for me. Like, it already looks like a sort of world that I want to like explore and get into. Yeah, it is ridiculous that it is coming out along with 900 other games in that month. But yeah, it's like it's one we'll absolutely be making time for.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great note in terms of them continually just like shifting the environments, which then, it makes way for new types of stories to be told in that universe on top of, the portrayals of different locales and regions and things like that, which, if anything, it kind of moves in that direction that we've more or less always wanted with Silent Hill, where it's less about
Mm.
a specific place and more about what the
Yeah,
notion of Silent Hill actually means. So I think that that's great because, at the end of the day, like if Resi can move on from Spencer Mansion, there's no reason that Silent Hill can't move on from the town of Silent Hill and whatnot. And we've seen various attempts at doing so, but I think with these last two releases, we're trending in the right direction in terms of actually taking some pretty big swings that are along the way, like incorporating changes to storytelling and also gameplay. So we'll have answers on that sooner rather than
yeah,
later, thankfully.
yeah. And in both cases with this and F, like the fact they're supposed to be spin-offs effectively, but they don't feel like that. They feel like spin-offs are being treated in this way where Konami strangely ahead of the curve, doling out their franchises to other companies to sort of work on and do that, which a lot of other places are doing as well now. So, I mean, Paramount, so making their new gaming division have done that. We'll probably cover a few things in that as well. But it's an interesting thing to see because we're getting fresh ideas, like for established franchises, and I think with Screenburn's like talent for storytelling, it should be a really good mix. And like, it's nice to see that the game itself like really does just feel quite Silent Hill already. And yeah, that's just like a case of seeing how the writing goes and how encounters go, I suppose.
Yeah, I think, like I said, that we'll have more to report on that one soon. But for me as well, like the storytelling there, I think there's a lot of potential. We'll see. It might be a new approach for gameplay for a Silent Hill game if there's less emphasis on combat. But it really comes down to the storytelling with those games and whatnot. But now that we got those two major tentpole announcements out of the way, what else sort of like tickled your fancy the last few weeks with these announcements?
Well, I suppose we'll just sort of keep in that sort of release week thing, just because there's a couple of games as well as I
Mm,
just mentioned Onimusha, which has a demo out,
mm,
which like honestly it feels like still feels like Onimusha did, which is remarkable.
yeah.
Like Capcom are doing it again, it seems, and reviving another franchise with that. I mean, the accents are weird because they're all like British, like accents and stuff like on Japanese characters, and it's like very, very odd. But yeah, it still plays like an Onimusha game, so I was very satisfied by that. Um, Control Resonant also is coming out, I think, the
Mm.
same day as the day after Townfall. So like those three games in the space of 2 days, like is
Oh my god.
nuts. Like yeah, I like Remedy like being like the other sort of big purveyors of like this their own little universe, and
Mm.
going up against these two like feels unfair. But, like yeah, they make their own luck on that, I guess. Like, but yeah, I mean, we got to see more of Control Resonant as well, which I think has looked good, but I think they are definitely sort of holding back on some stuff. Like there's lots of sort of interesting sort of shifts, kind of like what's it, the game Fez used to do, like where you have different
Oh
perspective
yeah.
shifts, but in more 3D sort of thing, like you can walk up this, walk around this, sort of thing like that. And that also big hammer, which helps. I'm never going to say no to a big hammer. I like the idea of like the events, the first game, kind of like being like a temporary stopgap for like what was going on there, and like how it can't be contained anymore, and like now out and about, and that whole relationship between Jesse and her brother, like now changed, and the change of protagonist making sense for that story as well.
Yeah.
Um, I do think in the horrible mess of the games coming out at that time, and yes, we know why, it's just going to be unfortunate if like it just gets this small niche audience of people going, oh yeah, this is good because it does this and this and this. I mean, Control did very well, and Alan Wake 2, is like beloved by the horror community, like for what it did. I think it'll do well enough, especially as Remedy are like self-publishing. They don't have to worry about anyone else with that, and they've got other projects that will keep them tidy and going on. But I suppose there would be a little edginess after FBC's Firebreak kind of didn't do well. But I think the way they responded to that, in terms of like, okay, cut price, make this, friend passes, and making it like self-sufficient for the future, it shows that they are really understanding what they need to do with their games, and it's allowing them to make the games they want to make. I was saying this week to someone, like, it feels like it's been 5 minutes since Control came out, and then it's like it's 8 years. Like, how has it been 8 years since Control came out like that? So yeah, it's like I felt this like the sequel was rushed somehow. I was like, it's not. No, it really just. So yeah, that world is just so wonderfully weird, and I think given the success of stuff like the Backrooms film and like that, and wider sort of interest in like the weird and wonderful stuff that doesn't make sense and impossible buildings, it'll be a good opportunity for it to do well, and have a sort of a wider audience. Maybe not straight away, but not everyone wants to play Grand Theft Auto 6 when it comes to that. He says, considering everyone owns about 6 copies according to the sales data.
Right. Yeah, just every look that I get at Control Resonant, it just makes me more excited and speaks, I think, to the qualities and strength of Control, which is just like which has always been something with Remedy, which is just like their attention to world building, because of the fact that this is, again, like a departure from Control in some pretty big ways in terms of gameplay and whatnot, and also in some ways like looks like a first for them in terms of just like the types of games that they make. But again, that is greeted by me with like a lot less skepticism or just like worry, because of the fact that it feels like it makes sense for the world that they've created, and like seeing how they're able to manipulate the world, and playing around with a larger set piece of like leaving the old house and everything. Like, oh, okay, cool, now I get to see what essentially is like manipulation of environments in the quote unquote real world, or the rest of the world, it being the city, and seeing like how many different creative ways they can take it. That just like really excites me in a way that, again, like if this was any other franchise, the notion like, oh, you're making this like action game that maybe has like a little inkling of like a Souls game behind it or something like that, like, oh, I don't know how that's going to work, when that wasn't the basis of the original. But again, like they just have created this world that even after Control, and then all the story DLC and stuff for that, and it's just like, yeah, it's still a world that I feel like I understand very little about, and still want to occupy and understand more and more of it. And to your point about the relationship between Jesse and her brother, and seeing how that is strengthened and unpacked and explored amongst swinging a big ass hammer, seems just like to be this awesome out of left field kind of a continuation of a franchise that at this point, like, I'm just excited to occupy again in very new and different ways. But I think, yeah, again, like even if Firebreak was maybe a bit of a misfire in a way, and they tried some new things out with that, like there were still aspects of that where I was like, oh, okay, this is a world that I do want to return to. Maybe preferably in a different game, but I still
Mm.
want to return to that world nonetheless.
Yeah, like having it to a sort of wider cityscape that's like
Mm,
all messed up in this way, I think is another sort of way that you can sort of push further. And
yeah.
yeah, I'm just very keen to see what's different with that world, with this and how that the hiss and all that affects everything
Mm,
outside of that space.
mhm, yeah, absolutely. Again,
But
the fact that that's
yeah,
coming out against
no,
two other huge games, just like, oh God, I'm already stressed out about later in the year.
I know, and it's like, and then I mean, then you get into October. I mean, even the beginning of September, there's just games, 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 games. And it's
Mm,
it's just fine. I was kind of relieved when I saw some stuff that was like, yeah, next year. I was like, oh, good. I mean, it's sensible. It's like if you can't get it out by November, just don't bother. Like if you're a
mm,
big game, just wait. Like let the small indie games, people will play them regardless. So it's like you're not really going up against Grand Theft Auto it's in that
yeah.
sense. But I think we've seen that with a few games where they don't mind releasing closer to that because they know that that's not the audience. But what did you have next in that interested you?
Yeah, just one quick thing, and then maybe we'll take a quick break and dive back into our lists.
Yeah.
But for me, it was getting to see just more of Ill, which
Mm.
is going to be coming out for PC and PS5, and yeah, just getting to see more of the body horror and body like dismemberment aspects of that game. It just further really excited me with that. It being this first person survival horror game that in that trailer that we got initially, it was one of those things where I'm like, oh, okay, this I've seen tech demos like what 5 or 6 years ago
Yeah.
regarding this game, and it was like, cool, but that's like a really brief tech demo. So there's some promise there, and then we got that more cinematic trailer. Oh, okay, cool. This is hitting some notes for me here. But then getting to see like more emphasis on like actual gameplay moments amongst some of the cinematics, that just really like speaks to a horror game that feels unrestrained in a way that I love for my body horror. Just like from that opening instance of your character getting a knife, it's like embedded in this skull, and he just like is wriggling with it and just like really fucking gnarly. And then naturally, a head gets severed, but limbs grow out of the head and then wrap itself around your arm, very akin to like The Thing. And just getting to see like little moments like that make me excited for that game in a way that um, initially I was just like very skeptical about it because I was like, cool, another zombie game. Like, how many of these do I have to play? But this seems to take it in some really cool directions. And then there's also this like, it wasn't really shown in this trailer. It was shown in the previous one. There's like this steampunk aspect almost that I'm really interested
Mm.
in. Like this guy shows up and he's got basically like a like in the Iron Man film, the first prototype that he builds is
Yeah.
this like rickshaw sort of thrown together piece of metal suit, and like that's in this Ill as well, and just like getting a little bit more into the world and whether that be steampunk or some other kind of influence. I'm just really interested in seeing how this game kind of shakes out. That also being uh, Team Clout being what the basically offshoot of Mundfish
Yes.
Powerhouse, like yeah, from those folks. So I'm just really interested to see like how this game further shakes out, and everything I see about it just makes me more excited for it. So I'm really
Mm.
looking forward to just like getting to play this. Unfortunately, my PC I don't think is going to be able to run this, and I don't have a PS5, so I might be doing some waiting. But I think at the end of the day, it's one that I'm more optimistic about than I thought I would be. So,
Yeah. I'm more and more convinced it will be a short, sharp one, like in
mm,
terms of the game, with some depth with the physics and stuff, like
yeah,
for replay value. Because I just look at it and think there's no way you can maintain that for a long game, like
right.
for several reasons. I mean, like budget wise, on the first sort of thing of it, but I mean, definitely like in the newer footage, like you can definitely see something that looks a bit more genuine as
Mm,
well. Yeah, I think it is like captured on PS5 Pro, but yeah, it
yeah.
looks a bit more realistic in terms of like what's possible, whilst not looking like a downgrade necessarily. It I mean, with their sort of background in like doing creature effects for films and stuff, like
Mm,
which really, really shows, I think, as
yeah.
well. Like, yeah, I do think it'll end up being a bit of a roller coastery, sort of relentless thing, which I think fits everything they've shown us so far. I
Mm.
don't think you need many moments of quiet in a game like this, where it's just like, oh my god, this thing's coming at you. Like, yeah, like I guess we'll see. It's 2027 isn't too far off now, I guess. So just depends which end of it.
Yeah, you make a great point. Like this is one that I really hope is as short as possible because of the fact that, as you said, like it's difficult to maintain that, but at the same time, it looks like it could be quite the punchy little horror experience given just some of the first glimpses we've had at it. But yeah, we'll see how that shakes out.
Mhm.
But yeah, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we can dive into some of the other stuff that's caught our eye as of late. But more on those in a moment. And we're back from our break. And Neil, what is something on the list that you'd like to chat about that maybe is you have any like indie stuff or stuff that's kind of like out of left field, not attached to one of the bigger pre-existing franchises or series out there?
I mean, there was Magician: The Devil's Deal, which
Hmm.
I think showed up at the Xbox show, which at first I was a bit about because I don't know, the trailer is very like 10 years ago kind of trailer, if you know what I mean, where like it looks nice, but it's like this isn't the game, is it? Sort of
Hmm.
thing. Like, but it looks like Bioshock, but a magician sort of thing. It's from Uppercut Games, I believe,
Hmm.
who did stuff like City of Brass, which was pretty okay. Yeah, and I like that well enough. But yeah, the idea, I think you make a deal with the devil, and then you're sort of like general, garden variety magic stuff, tricks become like proper cool sort of things you can do. And yeah, it really did just feel like some sort of Bioshock spin-off in the trailer, just especially the way it was presented. And yeah, it intrigued me quite a lot. The idea of having like magic powers to sort of like entrap enemies and like do all different stuff to them. And I just need to see the game properly in action because while they've shown like bits of gameplay footage, it's like stuff again, much like with Ill, it's like I need to kind of believe what you're showing me a bit more. I mean, it's a little bit more believable with this one, but like the cool stuff was like, you know, like reading book of spells and like the little hand movements and animations of stuff and like twisting, build a room upside down so you can access different areas and stuff. If they can really nail that, like that would be absolutely amazing and really, great fun to use as well. Like using a magician's set of tricks for as a sort of arsenal of weaponries. Yeah, and it's, as I said, it's horror based, given it's like this Victorian London that is in the depths of hell, effectively. And yeah, like I said, not much more we can say about it, but like that trailer like did catch the eye, just because I guess I'd call it like the Great Bioshockio. That's basically what the first thing that came to mind.
No, I agree. Like I think that that's the thing with like BioShock is that that's a great formula, but then seeing all of the ways that that can be sort of blended and adapted with like a unique setting or
Mm.
just like some type of unique twist on the player's actual like agency in that world. I think is always going to be an exciting sort of like first look for me for anything. And so like you were saying, this sort of like magician's aspect is like something completely out of left field that I would never think of. So it'll be really interesting to see where the follow through is with that and how that kind of like comes to fruition and evolves and deviates. But yeah, we've got a couple of games I think like that coming down the pipe.
Mm. What about you though?
Yeah. Let's see. For me, I think the one thing that was like a little bit removed from something that's already established was encrypted, which
Oh yeah.
is basically like if there was a horror version of Pokemon. It's from a developer named
Yeah.
Autumn Night. It's due out later this year, and it's presented exactly like a Pokemon game. However, there is this horror aspect, and it looks like instead of friendly, cuddly Pikachus and Charmanders and what have you. It is more along the lines of like cryptids. And basically, they utilize that Game Boy art style. There's even some like FMV live
Yeah.
action type of stuff in there that looks like it was, or quite literally actually was filmed on a digital camera from the late 90s and whatnot. And it's basically you investigating cryptids, capturing, fighting them, and kind of like just exploring this world presented in that Game Boy, classic Game Boy graphical style and, limitation style almost, that just kind of like, again, is the type of game that I think horror fans would have loved to have had back in the late 90s, early aughts. However, nobody had the sensibilities to do so with Game Boy technology back then. But yeah, getting to see a little bit more of that makes this just like even more promising, especially the found footage video stuff. That's just like a very creepy sort of mood piece to what otherwise, as I said, is like a deviation from Pokemon.
Yeah, it does. It does remind me of like that old Game Boy camera thing for
Yeah.
the FMV stuff. Like it's a fascinating idea. Like, and I think to have something that is so clearly evoking Pokemon, but isn't like ripping it off in the same way something like Pal World is. Like, I quite like that. And a horror twist on it makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah, so that's one we don't have a solid release date other than later this year, but yeah, that'll be something that I think I'm going to bring to the table for a grab bag like immediately when that comes out, because it's just such a cool idea, and seeing how somebody's going to be able to play around with that Pokemon structure will be very cool to see. But yeah, what else sort of jumped out to you?
Oh, we had a couple of games announced. I think it was yesterday from some people we've covered games of before. We had a new one from Citizen Sleepers, Fellow Traveler and Jump Over the Age, called Signet City, which is a bit more in keeping than Citizen Sleeper was, in terms of like what we do, where you're basically like a fungal parasite that takes over people, and like in this sort of weird world of like it's almost a brutalist architecture and stuff like that, and you can basically manipulate these people and find out their stories. And yeah, it's supposed to be like an old 1980s sort of thing, and it's like all like hand drawn black and white stuff. I mean, it's so much of a departure from what Citizen Sleeper looked like, and it's definitely more visual in terms of its storytelling. But yeah, just the concept alone, I found like straight away was like, oh, considering the writing on Citizen Sleeper games, like to see that and that idea, oof, like a first-person narrative RPG, you're not only the parasite, but you are like the people you're taking as hosts as well, like that, and being able to change the stories and the action to them with that. Like, it's a simple idea, but it makes so much sense. And yeah, I expected to get quite deep, and that sort of weird, black and white brutalist sort of architecture. Yeah, it just, I love that sort of shit. So it's like straight away, I was like, oof, yeah, like more so than Citizen Sleeper. It was like, this is like definitely straight away on the wish list. Can't wait to play this sort of thing.
Yeah, you and I were talking about it the other day and just saying like, yeah, the same attention to storytelling that was present in Citizen Sleeper. We can't wait to see it applied to like another world that is a departure from the very much like cyberpunk sci-fi dystopian atmospheres of Citizen Sleeper, and applying that to something else that just like not only adopts a new look, a new narrative, but just like an entirely new visual style, which I think really like it informs a lot, I think, about what makes Jump Over the Ages games so unique, is that their attention to storytelling is one that's very much rooted in their worlds, and it's great to see them continually branch out. Obviously Citizen Sleeper had a sequel, but then their other game, even In Other Waters, was like a drastic departure from Citizen Sleeper. And so again, like just getting to see the continuation from a developer that really has this established knack for refining their narrative worlds they've created, but at the same time, like not afraid to apply that to something that's very different. Because we would have been happy with the Citizen Sleeper 3.
Oh, yeah.
However, if anything, like this is a game that I'm even more excited than if we had gotten that sequel, because of the fact that there's the potential for them to kind of like play around in this new universe and world, and don't really know what to expect from that other than quality, which is a great problem to have, if you will.
Yeah, and like again, I assume it'll be next year before we
Mm,
get it. But yeah, I was just so impressed by it visually straight away. Like it's something more instant about it, and I think capturing the tone of something that different as well. It just, but knowing, from the idea alone and the anticipation of what that could be. Oof, yeah, like it was nice to see like several developers who sort of followed, like go in these different ways and different paths for their next games. Like, and really, I mean, we had Wrong Organ, obviously,
mm.
who did mouth-washing, like putting out a co-op tank horror game. Like, that's going to be their next thing. But
Yeah,
with that sort of idea, which I suppose might as well talk about that as we're
yeah,
sort of talking about it. But
yeah. You beat me to
yeah,
it.
which is
That's
yeah,
great.
but yeah, Carcass Clad.
Mm,
Yeah, it is literally like a game that has to be played in co-op sort of thing, where you are just operating different parts of the tank. You have like limited fuel, the limited ammo. Um, Basically in a city that's been ravaged by war, but it's like abandoned. But yeah, there's some weird stuff going on in that, and like yeah, it again, like what we just said with Citizens Sleeper to Signet City. It's like you can see the through line in a way, but not in a very obvious visual way. It's
mm.
just, I mean, it looks so different already, like in terms of what it's doing. But yeah, I'm fascinated to see how that works as a co-op experience. Like that it is so tactile, that it's so physical, and then again with the storytelling like ability that could go with that. I mean, it'd be interesting to see how story is approached, given it is a co-op game,
Mm.
and it has to be a co-op game. But yeah, like what a ballsy sort of swing to go after, like getting so much acclaim with mouthwashing to say, yeah, something really different this time. Like that's the beauty, I think, of the smaller spaces, that there's less need to sort of necessarily go, oh, well, we could just make a sequel to this or a game exactly like the last one or similar
Mm.
to that. It's like, no, we're going to make something that's wildly different, but very much like in our wheelhouse sort of thing.
Yeah, and I love the attention to detail here, which, we've played a number of more specifically like horror bites where they put you in the role of someone that has a very specific like tactile kind of a job or role, where it's like, oh, I'm operating this machinery I don't really understand, and I have to interact with every single little piece of it and whatnot, as if you would in real life if you're operating what is typically like some insane dystopian machine. And just the notion that like not only is there the teamwork aspect, but that each one of those roles, the commander, gunner, driver, provides what is, it clearly seems to be just like a wholly unique experience within that game, in terms of the role that you're playing. And each one of them facilitates obviously a different role, but it's more about like the fundamental mechanics and the tactile nature of those spaces that each operator is, in charge of in that tank, that I think is
Mm.
going to be really interesting. And not to already think about replay value, but the notion that you could go into this, which I think their Steam page says each session's like 2 to 3 hours maybe to get through it.
Yeah.
The potential for accessing different like emotional sort of states within that game, of like the tension of each one of those roles and what each one has to do, and the situations that you can get into, I think just makes it a really exciting game. And like you said, it being just so out of left field, but if there's a developer that knows like weird dystopian sort of horror that can be subtle but at the same time like very in your face periodically, it's definitely a
Mm.
developer like Wrong Organ.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, it's refreshing, like
Yeah,
to see something. So you think you know what you want with developers when they make a game, and yeah, to see these come out and do this, yeah, grand stuff.
I just love to see the originality just keep on going. We don't have to get the same type of game over and over from a developer. Not that, had those fears with Wrong Organ, but I just think like the trend overall is that you get to see people just like get some traction with something, make a game that's very acclaimed, and then the confidence with which they approach the next project, such as this, that is just totally bizarre, but you're going into it just like giving them even more than the benefit of the doubt is
Yeah.
something that I think is really great.
Yeah, I think mouthwashing, obviously, yeah, as much as it's not just about making money, it's like it did give them the sort of financial backing that they can sort of go, oh yeah, no, we've done that, so
Mhm.
that gives us a nice sort of padding to do what we want, and that's what should be the good thing about like having a hit game is like you can go into the next one and go, well, we'll make what the fuck we want, like, and
Yeah.
just keep, because that's why you got there in the first place. Like you made a game you wanted to make. It took time and hard toil. So yeah, why not? Just use that. It's often sort of like sniffed at, I think, in certain spaces. Like you see it in movies, when like a director makes like something great on the debut, and then the second film is more like, wow, I've got the money and the power to do what I want now, so I'll make this weird and wildly ambitious thing or oddball, abrasive thing. Like I always think of David Mitchell with It Follows going into
Yeah.
like Under the Silver Lake, and like how that film is just so abrasive compared to I mean, still very good, but like
Mm.
it's just like it's honestly like oh my god, that's what you would call a career killer for some reason, but it's he's luckily coming back. But yeah, you think of that, you think of like Richard Kelly when he did Southland Tales after Donnie
Mm.
Darko, stuff like that. It's like it's great to get that chance to make what you want, but yeah, like I think games at this level probably a bit more forgiving, like
Mm.
where the developer isn't always like front and center, like
Yeah.
and the people that appreciate the developer are more likely to understand what they're going for.
Exactly. If we're gonna keep it in the realm of indie and just like weird random shit, the game that we got to see a little bit more of that I've been excited about for a while is In Hope Voiden
Ah,
from
yes.
developer what were they? Bill Brutch Games. So this is a game where it essentially seems like a steampunk brutalist kind of depiction of like World War One almost,
Mm,
where you're in this war zone and you have 12 soldiers, and each soldier naturally has a life. However, death is permanent. And so, each one of those characters is basically going to be navigating this hellscape that is basically a bunch of like trenches and underground facilities, trying to navigate the horrors there within. It has a lot of parallels in terms of like the aesthetic and visual style to what is like a miniatures game that's called Trench Crusader, which
mm.
I don't really play. I don't play miniatures games, but like that world I've become obsessed with kind of because it's just like so evocative of history, but also grim dark. That being, like with 40K, Warhammer 40K and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And it's just like such a cool aesthetic that has captured this sort of like tetanus aspect that I think is so compelling with a lot of like grimdark stuff, which is just like a world that even in the set pieces where there's no violence going on, like it's a world that looks like it's actively trying to kill you, even if it's just like barren structures and whatnot. And I'm just really intrigued by this notion of like these 12 soldiers each facilitate something different. They each have their own series of traits and their own motivations in this zone and what they're trying to accomplish and whatnot. And seeing how you're able to influence the world and overall journey utilizing that skill set of each one of those lives and the ramifications of that, which are not clear other than the world will be reactive to them, I
Mm.
think just makes for a game that is very interesting just to look at. And I think that for me, like, there's so much of, in a game's aesthetic and whatnot that like does a lot of the heavy lifting. But here to have a gameplay mechanic that's basically being teased and talked around at the same time that is unique and compelling, I think is just, it's makes for a game that we still know very little about, despite the fact that we're seeing more and more of it. But I think at the end of the day, like that just speaks to like how intriguing of a project this is. And I really can't wait to get some time with this one.
Yeah, it's like it reminds me very much of that sort of Mike Klubnika sort of
Hmm,
dystopian thing, but with that sort
sure.
of grungy sort of thing we had with like Amnesia the Bunker. But I mean that hook of like the 12 characters thing as well, like with how death is permanent and how death can affect the world sort of thing. Like a gimmick that has been done, but like in this particular context, and it feels like it's going to be again one of those experiences that are like small in like length, but probably quite deep in structure. Like that there'll be some interesting ideas with it, and yeah, like it's just again one of those games that really evokes something that you feel like you should have seen before, like but in like this really positive sort of way, not in a pure like happy nostalgia sort of way. And yeah, I like that there's mystery about it, but like the glimpses they've shown of like the familiar but like slightly otherworldly nature of it all, like it's intriguing straight away. Like I really want to know sort of how these sort of stories end up coming together, how those deaths that are going to happen will affect each story, and the fact they promise these permanent consequences and the death being persistent. Yes, like it sounds like a big swing for a game, a debut game, I believe, as well.
Yeah.
Like to do that. So yeah, I'm glad you sort of picked that out as well, because like I do remember covering this earlier in the week, and I was like, oh yes, like that was about 60 games ago, but I do remember it.
Well, plus, like, if you're going to introduce a game that has permadeath in it and you've got these 12 different characters and lives, like, this is a studio that I'm not familiar with. As you said, it's a debut for them. But there has to be an aspect of gameplay that is compelling to still pursue, even if you start to die pretty frequently and whatnot with losing these lives, right? Unless, granted, if you lose 6 guys right away, that might be too much loss to get the most out of it. But like there must be a feature here that is compelling, despite the fact that you might not be ending with your entire 12-man squad, if you will.
Yeah, I think there'll be something to it that gives a proper sort of end point. But I guess again, we won't know till we get to play that one.
What else do you got to chat about today?
Well, I mean, we've missed a very obvious one. Alien Isolation 2, happened, of course. As much as we knew it was kind of coming, it was like we got that teaser I think a couple of weeks ago, and then like we finally got the full trailer, which kind of poo-pooed some of the ideas and theories we had about that teaser. It's like it's not really set anywhere around Romulus's stuff, but it is set on a planet that's quite weather worn, and that in itself was like a great hook straight away. Seeing wide open areas where the weather is going to be a factor as well in your survival. Appears to be a new protagonist, like who's caused some sort of accident. But yeah, I mean, they're promising like an evolved sort of alien in terms of like the intelligence of how it stalks you, and given the environment is like more wide open, like as well, there will be like claustrophobic areas like of indoor facilities and stuff. But yeah, I was like, oh, okay, that is going to be a real sort of departure. Yeah, I mean, it's a brief teaser, but it's enough, like that. Just yeah, it's still that sort of same retro future tech sort of thing from the Ridley Scott original sort of era of stuff. Yeah, like I wonder if it is just going to be one alien, or if we're going to get multiples again, like we got towards the end of the first game. But yeah, I don't. It was nice to see like something in an open space where it still felt quite intimidating. I think they're using there'll be different tools as well that you'll sort of have to sort of scrounge again. And yeah, I'm just very, very excited to play another Alien game, and it's nice just to see like a glimpse of it, and like, oh shit, this thing's real, sort of thing. I mean, as much as this feels a bit techie and not quite the game we're going to finally see, it's like it's mad that it's been like 12 years, like seeing a sequel actually be there, and in that small snippet, and it'd be exciting, and leave so many questions still to be answered, sort of in terms of what the story is, in terms of loving it.
Yeah, I think that, for this next glimpse that we got of it, like they're not giving anything away with like much of a departure in terms of like what to expect. But to your point, it really is all about the new notion of like what the environments are going to be like in this game, giving you either larger environments or playing around with environmental factors that are very much based on like weather and whatnot. I think that that's going to be a really interesting aspect that naturally, you're going to go into some derelict ships and whatnot periodically, but I think that that will be the most interesting sort of departure from the original and whatnot, and getting to see some, multiple aliens, or, they might even play around with like the types or the permutations of xenomorphs and things that you might be encountering. So it'll be interesting to see how they play around with potentially like a larger arena for players to navigate, and sort of like how that is reflected in the tool set that the player is using, right? In terms of those items that you're using. If you've got this larger environment, you're going to need to give tools that are reflective of that lose the sort of claustrophobic focus of the original one. Because if you're outside walking around and there's, a storm or whatever, that noisemaker that you're using in the confines of the Nostromo or whatever that ship was called, like that's not going to work the same way. So I think that, it's clearly a developer that, as you noted, like it's been a long while since the original, but they also have the wherewithal to be like, we need to provide an experience that feels like an updating on worked so well in the original, but at the same time having some deviations that are reflective of this new approach with the environments themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's parts like in the film Aliens where like the outside in Hadley's Hope, and it feels like it should be vulnerable. They do feel vulnerable to be out in the open, yet nothing really happens out there
Mhm.
very often. So it'd be nice to see that realized. I have seen sort of notions that it is connected to the events of the first game in terms of like that it's something to do with part of Sevastopol that might have crashed off. But yeah, like that would be interesting. But and maybe that will give us some experimental sort of things going on there. I would guess the weather would play a factor in like terms of like noise and how it covers you, sort of thing. So yeah, it's all speculation really at this point. So my God, I mean, I know it's not the game running as the game necessarily, but it looks gorgeous already.
Yeah. Well, we're just happy to be getting more games in that universe because, like you said, it's been a long while, but we're going to hopefully get another look at, get a more in-depth look at gameplay sometime soon, but we'll see.
Yeah. Anything else stick out for you?
I suppose just like the Halloween getting the first look at like single player. I think that it's more or less what you would assume a Halloween game that lets you don the mask of Michael Myers would look like, but just getting to see that in like gameplay form was nice, I suppose. I guess, have they announced a multiplayer component for this, or is
Oh
it
yeah,
solely?
yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, multiplayer was like the first thing they
Sure.
mentioned it as a single player mode,
Yeah.
but like I think everyone kind of assumed it would be like not much of anything. Like,
Right.
and it's quite a contrast as well, like because obviously Gunn have had their issues with this in the
Mhm.
past, in terms of like the idea of like making a live service horror game based on like a property, like
Mhm.
it does leave you at risk, for various reasons, and we saw it with Paramount doing was it Paramount? Anyway, but yeah, saw Genesis like announced, and it was like
Oh yeah.
and it's an asymmetrical horror, a multiplayer horror game.
Mhm.
I was like straight away, it's like, do we not learn? Like it's like, I mean, that game seems to be going more for like the Outlast Trials sort of vibes, and quite
Yes.
intriguing that it's set like 100 years ago, sort of thing
Mhm.
as well, and like as a sort of origin of the torture idea. So that in itself makes it a bit more interesting because it'd be more like like I said, the Outlast Trials, or even like Resident Evil Resistance, where it's like have an an operator basically sorting things out in the background and affecting the players who are in like the maze effectively. So yeah, between the two of them, it's like two interesting ways of going about it. Like I'm glad that Halloween does have a single player component that is looking like it's got a bit more to it. I mean, digital Donald Pleasance didn't turn out to be like the weirdest thing we saw this weekend in terms of like digital likenesses going back
Yeah,
to
really.
life. But yeah, it's I don't mind a nice little like playing as Michael Myers story is kind of the sort of it's the sort of thing I've hoped for in like a slasher game, like to
Sure.
actually play the story as the slasher, like or
Mm.
as victim, and it's always been there with these games, but they've just kind of said, well, rather than program you know an AI to do this job, we'll just let you do it, like sort
Mm.
of thing, and it's like which is fine and well, but it turns into a meta game of like, well, if you clip this on this frame, or if you do this certain move in this certain animation at this time, you can escape from that or do that, and it just becomes nonsense. Like,
Mm.
I think, yeah, something that is more focused like that, like it'll keep the game alive longer, like, and it'll mean that if the inevitable happens with the multiplayer side thing, and it's like, well, there's no point supporting this anymore because nobody's playing it because
Right.
one game has all the fucking people in it. Like, I mean, it's funny, yeah. We've got two multiplayer horror games featuring characters that have already been in Dead by Daylight, I suppose. But I mean, obviously, the Saw one being a bit
Mm.
different, but yeah, it's like we'll see how they go. But it does seem like someone's got to do something very different to like break that, or
Mm.
accept that like I think that's the smart thing they're gonna have done here this time is say yeah, we got out a single player, we got something that's going to last and be meaningful and doesn't leave our game kind of just there in
Mhm.
the future.
Yeah, I think at the very least too, like people like you and I that are massive fans of the films, it would be cool to get to play through some of these like almost Hitman esque recreations of our favorite scenes or iconic scenes from the film. So to your point, like if that can be maybe somewhat more substantial than just a basic tutorial, that would give that game a bit more of a reason for people that aren't maybe in love with the state of asymmetrical multiplayer games, a reason to check it out. Because if that just ended up being a straight up multiplayer game in the sense like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre one, I probably wouldn't pick it up if I'm being honest. But I think that like this at least gives me a reason maybe to dive into it a bit.
Yeah, we need that. I
Yeah.
mean, it's like stuff like Scream is there for the same sort of treatment. Where like that would be
Mm.
really good. I think in fact, we pretty much dream pitched this. I think in an episode a while back where we just sort of said like, Supermassive would be great if they were doing,
Mm.
a Scream game like, which they've kind of gone around by doing different types of games, which I suppose brings me to a good point, which is that there is a Supermassive game not made by Supermassive, which is Until Dawn 2, which
Yeah.
is by Firesprite, who I think made what's that game called? The Persistence, that was it, which started life as like a VR horror game, which was very good, but got like a flat screen remake. Um, yeah, very quickly sort of cottoned on that it was going to be Until Dawn. I didn't realize like after the state of play thing that it was not Supermassive. I just kind of assumed, oh yeah, Supermassive. They're always making stuff. So yeah,
Yeah.
it just but but I remembered like the whole sort of history with that game, the original game. Uh, I mean, it's exactly what a sequel should be, I guess. Instead of being snowy vacation, it's a sunny vacation, and they've gone down the sort of like YouTuber route. It was like being like paranormal investigators coming to check out this island, and there's a weirdo on it, and lots of icky, horrible murder stuff going on. Um, yeah, I mean, I'm quite intrigued by that one to sort of see, you know, Firesprite take on the job and see if they can make something of it. Like they're not getting sort of, you know, they're hit with the thing that the original game did, where it was like, make this game for this peripheral that is going to be outdated before long. It's very much like, no, straight game, done, dusted.
Yeah.
Get some Hollywood names in, and I think Dacre Montgomery's in it, I believe. It's, but yeah, I like the look of it. Like, it's got that sort of, there's a campiness to it, which was quite fun to see. Like, it did seem like it was being a bit over the top about how novel it was. Oh, people die and the story continues, sort of thing. It's like, that should be the first clue that wasn't super massive. It's like, because they've been doing that with every fucking game they've done. So it's like, it's like, this part's not new. But
Right.
yeah, but yes, no, that was definitely an out there surprise. I did not expect an Until Dawn 2, and yeah, there it was, just showed up.
Yeah, I think that especially after watching Sam Raimi's Send Help this year, I'm really into that notion of like the sort of like island scenario. That's pretty cool. And so to know that, it's going to be in the vein of Supermassive, despite the fact they're not developing it, their sort of like style and approach to game design, that just kind of makes me more excited for a setting than I normally would be, because normally that kind of thing just doesn't really work for me that much. I found that like the wintry woodland setting of the original Until Dawn really was like right up my alley, the type of thing that I was into. But
Yeah.
I think for this, I'm a little bit more optimistic about it. And also, I'm sure maybe some people did, but like if there were more celebrities that were featured in Until Dawn 2's trailer, I didn't recognize them. So that right there is like a point for them, because I think I've bitched to you previously about just like, after a while I get tired of playing a game and I recognize every fucking person's face that's in that game. It gets to be like a little distracting. So that's the kind of thing that I think maybe is going to be more of a positive for me, but that's very much a me kind of a thing.
Yeah, it's understandable. Sorry, it was your turn next, wasn't it? Like,
Yeah. Let's see. I guess I'll just briefly say, like you had mentioned it, like Saw Genesis. I get that they are, going with the sort of like framework of the Outlast trials that clearly worked for Outlast. I'm not interested in playing another multiplayer game. If I was going to play a multiplayer horror game, it would be Outlast Trials. It's probably like the best one that I've played in the last few years that clearly has the longevity behind it. But I am interested and think it's an interesting aspect that is set 100 years prior to, the original Jigsaw type of a thing. Like that, I think is like interesting narratively speaking. So as just like a fan of a couple of those Saw films, like that is a cool aspect to that. I think that might have some legs to it.
I do find it immensely funny that like Jigsaw as a character has like probably been in like 2.5 films, like as himself. Like the rest of the time he's talking over stuff from the future and the past. So it's like
The connectivity tissue there is a little fucked up, but I think it's still pretty cool that they're going to like play around with that, and that can have some interesting depictions in terms of like what that does to the world and the types of traps and whatnot. I guess for me, another thing that stood out that we got to see a bit more of, and it also got a release date for the first week of October, would be Silver Pines, which is a 2D survival horror side scroller that basically is like channeling a lot of like David Lynch, Twin Peaks kind of vibes with, Silent Hill and whatnot. But we also, I don't know if it's new or not, but there's a demo associated with this game now. But just like getting to see a little bit more of this world and that really gorgeous art style that goes along with it, and some of the mechanics that are there that are presented in an interesting way, given that, again, it's like this 2D side scroller. So I'm just like, again, really, really interested to see how that game is able to play around with that perspective, but also this really gorgeous art style that, again, feels like a mix of paper mache and graphic novel kind of a thing, with the aspect of like Silent Hill, where you're going to solve a puzzle and the puzzle like pops up on the screen and you can like zoom in on it and whatnot. So I guess I don't have much to say about that other than I just like to get more looks at this game, and I'm definitely going to go play that demo to kind of like get hands on with it, because like I said, there's only a couple of months until we actually get to play this one ourselves. But it was just nice to get a date out of this one. I
Yeah.
guess, yeah. In terms of something though that was like announced that I don't know if it was teased, but it definitely shocked me, and I was happy to hear was Wolf Among Us season 2 is finally going to be coming out. I was a massive fan of the original game. To hear that that's going to get remastered is great because it's been long enough, and naturally, Telltale is in a different state than it was previously. So getting to get to re-experience the Wolf Among, sorry, I meant the Wolf Among Us, Wolf Among Us 2, getting to play the original remastered and then getting to play the sequel will just be like this nice sort of full circle moment. Because yeah, I really enjoyed the original one and found it to be so unique. Probably enjoyed it more than I did even The Walking Dead. I think that's a fine game, but just for me personally at that point, I was probably, I don't know, indulging in The Walking Dead, like between watching the show and then reading all the comics. And it was like I came to The Wolf Among Us completely fresh and getting to like play that game. I think I played the entire thing in like a weekend, basically. I was like obsessed with that game, and then went and read Fables, the graphic novel series that's based upon, and just like really loved it. So to get to see a continuation of that world, I was just very, very happy to see.
Yeah, it was nice. It's like again one of those things. It comes up and you're like, didn't that happen already? Like,
Right.
but yeah, it's just that's just the way. There's so many games that do take forever for various reasons. I mean, yeah, this one was lots of reasons why it didn't end up showing up until now. But yeah, I mean, remastering the first game makes sense. It was like it made so much sense in the Telltale model at the time. I think the pace of it was right, and the detective level of it means that it kind of fit that sort of adventure game sort of aesthetic quite well.
Mm.
So yeah, I'm intrigued. I kind of want to sort of go back to that first game because it feels like forever to
Yeah.
playing it as well. Yeah, I mean, it's such a fun concept anyway, like the whole
Mm.
sort of fairy tale characters like in the modern world thing. So yeah, well, that'd be a good one.
For sure. There was a game on this list that was of a franchise that I don't particularly care for, but I think that the developer, Bloober team
Mm.
being at the helm of certainly made it a bit more notable for me personally. That being Star Trek Shadow Frontier.
Yeah, yeah, that was
Yeah.
yeah, I got like a heads up ahead of time that there was going to be a Star Trek horror game on show. I didn't know that it would be Bloober, which was I mean, when we put together the sort of things of Bloober were working on an established IP sort of thing like that, and everyone was like, "Oh yeah, it'll be they're talking about Silent Hill or whatever," like, and it being Star Trek, I was like, "Oh, okay, that's cool." And yeah, I mean, it takes Roland, who was it Next Generation, and I think
Mm.
in Picard as well. Like basic voiced by Michelle Forbes as well, who voiced and sorry acted and voiced the character in the series. I mean, it's interesting to sort of stick along the lines of doing sci-fi horror again for
Mm.
Bloober after doing Kronos, but like to do it in a Star Trek universe, and by the sounds of it, having that sort of ethos of like Star Trek, of like having that you want to sort of be fight for who you are and fight for what you believe is right, and do that in a place that is incredibly hostile and is like basically not quite a living planet but an organism that is effectively altering the planet and changing things. I mean, when I first saw the trailer, I was like, looks like it's going to be a bit stripped back. We could just have a sort of a run and hide kind of horror, but in reading further, it does have some combat with phasers and
Mm.
used for puzzles and stuff. Yeah, I mean, if you'd said this like a few years ago, Bloober going back to someone's IP, like from movies or TV or whatever, after Blair Witch, I would have gone, no, don't do that. But I think now, especially after doing Kronos as well, I think this is a great idea. Like,
Mm.
and it's a game that out of nowhere just suddenly shot up straight up like my list of things that I wanted to play because I'm so confident that Bloober can do a great job with this. And yeah, it's kind of sad that with that whole thing we had recently about with the Paranormal Activity game kind of just getting canned, and now Paramount have like made a games division like
Mm.
in the aftermath of that, and we've got all these different things coming out from it. It's sad that didn't sort of get the backing to get
Yeah.
made, but at the same time, to see Bloober get to sort of tackle this, and I think Star Trek just had like a really good game with Star Trek Voyager Across the Unknown, which is
Mm.
like a FTLE XCOM-y type thing, like based on that show, and horror elements of that with that one. But this is like pure, like proper horror game, and yeah, and I'm very intrigued to see what they do with it.
Yeah, I think that, we've talked at length about it, but like Bloober Team really has earned back the trust of specifically like horror gamers because of the fact that, they just kind of like rose from the ashes and proved that not only can they remake or play around in worlds that were previously developed by other studios, but they can also bring their own original creativity to
Hmm.
projects such as, Kronos, like you said. And so I think that for me, even though I'm not a fan of Star Trek, like almost at all, the fact that Bloober is going to play around in that universe, preferably it'll be something Borg related, because that kind of is like one of the more horror aspects, I think, within that universe. But more importantly, it doesn't matter because they kind of like have my trust and kind of just delving into a universe and exploiting some of the more horror aspects of it. And funny enough, you mentioned Kronos. That's going to be getting its own story DLC
Which
soon
make it
enough.
which seems to make it like a faster paced game as well, which is
Mm.
quite intriguing. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, there's something I did want to bring up in case you haven't got it on your docket, but
Yeah.
as it wasn't a game necessarily, it was a DLC for a game, which is Doom: The Dark Ages expansion
Mm.
Revelations, the most overused term in sequeldom. Yeah, I think apart from the fact that it's more Doom, the Dark Ages, which
Mm.
is great, it's the fact that it is like set after that, and basically like in another level of hell where he's been betrayed and in the prison of his mind. And there's a couple of bits in there that are like, oh, like there's the thing of like a modern hospital he's in. There's levels that are very clearly levels from the Doom games, the original
Mm.
ones as well, which is like, oh, so I'm very intrigued by that sort of new sort of aspect of it, but also like that spear weapon as well. Like,
Yeah.
oof, like in addition to what we got, yeah, I'm just, and that's like the closest thing we got coming out. That's like a month away now, like as well. So, like, I'm sure we'll cover it when it comes out and we've played it. But oh boy, yeah, that's setting up something quite interesting.
Yeah, I just get more and more excited for each new Doom release because of the fact that they continually are like switching things up and introducing mechanics that are different and seem like they're so foreign to the identity of Doom that they could never work. And then time and time again, recently, it's been the complete opposite case. So yeah, I'm very excited for more Doom, and I can't just wait to see like how they're able to incorporate even new weird mechanics and
Yeah.
still somehow make them feel as if they've always been an integral part of that identity because they certainly proved that with the Dark Ages, and to see how they're going to do that with this like spear and whatnot is just again it's more Doom, but at the same time it's just presenting it in new and exciting ways, which this this far into a series life is just like really exciting as a
Yeah.
longtime fan.
I see, and with that sort of new weapon, like it's looking a bit more vertical again. So I think people who
Mm.
are like a bit are about like the very tanky nature of the Dark Ages
Yeah.
might be intrigued by that. That you now have a bit more like movement and high and low sort of thing.
Yeah, no, I think that again, like they keep kind of playing around in that world, and if anything, I think my initial fear with the Dark Ages was with it getting like larger and playing around with like verticality and stuff like that. It was kind of like okay, how's this going to jive with like the notion of being more of a tank rather than a fighter jet? And they seem to be continually like bridging the gap between each of the sequels. Um, and whatnot, and kind of like further evolving on that, while at the same time like having that badass score and aesthetic to kind of like complement it and go along with it. So it's always going to be an exciting time to be a Doom fan. I'll say that, and
Yeah.
seeing how they can evolve on that with the DLC, especially like I didn't play any of the DLC for Doom Eternal, but you know, the Dark Ages is the type of thing where it's like I'm going to buy every piece of DLC for that because that was much more in line with you know, as much I did really enjoy Eternal, but I just was completely captivated with the Dark Ages and its approach to gameplay and kind of like revitalizing that. So I'll be very excited to see kind of like how that continues to be fleshed out in DLC before the inevitable conclusion of you know, that chapter of Doom and seeing what they choose to do next.
Yeah, like I re-downloaded the Doom 2016 straight
Oh,
afterwards.
nice.
I realized I hadn't really played much on
Mm.
PS5, so I was like, oh, yep, absolutely, let's do that.
Well, there you go. Yeah, it's really exciting just to see how they're able to continually change things up with Doom. But at the end of the day, like they just have like my full send on whatever they choose to do because they continually just like redefine that expectation in new and surprising ways. And like I said when we covered the game, Doom having a parry system is like the last feature I would ever think, and now I can't imagine Doom without it. So
Yeah, that's it. Right. We'll sort of wrap up with a few
yeah,
little bits, I guess. So 'cause there were so many games. Like,
really. Um, Yeah, I guess the last one that I would really mention, well, I guess it's two, but like Metro 2039, don't
mm,
have a great deal of insight into it, but just I love that world. As soon as we got a trailer that showcased a little bit of the return to the Metro universe, I reinstalled Metro Exodus and was playing through the DLC, which I never got around to, like Sam's
okay.
story and whatnot. Never played that and was just like phenomenal and finished that and then immediately got back into replaying just Metro Exodus. And yeah, still a really fantastic game that was able to open up the world and leave the claustrophobic, more linear sort of origins of that series. And
Mm,
yet it still like doesn't miss a beat. And the way that game's paced, you've got these larger environments that you can explore, and they've got a lot of like side missions and things like that. But then they also like shoehorn in a couple of linear sections, which I think really do a great job of bridging the gap between new Metro and the old classical approach to Metro. And so I'm just looking forward to being in that world, and hopefully they're going to emphasize the survival aspects a little bit more, or even to
mm.
like take that one step further. But I'm just happy to return to that world, as it were.
Yeah, I mean, there's elements of that trailer that do suggest a bit of time hopping as well,
Mm,
which is quite interesting. Whether that's just in flashback or not, but yeah, I mean, that alone and like the artwork kind of give me some big singularity sort of vibes on that one. I'm just like, ooh, that would be nice. Like,
mm,
if it does go down the route of like, let's have a bit where you can time hop sort of thing, which
yeah.
wouldn't be out of the question, in this sort of thing. Maybe you
Mm,
can alter time or something. But yeah, grand stuff. I'm very pleased there's more Metro.
yeah. Did you ever read those books, by the way?
Yeah, I mean, I'd read the books first, like years
Mm.
before the games were made, and I was like, so when the game first got announced, I was very excited, and then not so excited when it was Xbox only. So like at the time, but yeah,
Well,
no, I love the books. So like
okay.
they're fantastic.
Cool. I've been on a kick of I've been reading a bunch of random stuff, and I was as I was replaying it, I was thinking like, oh, I should probably try the books. So I'm glad to hear
Mm.
that they're pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, Glukowski's background as a reporter, like, kind of lends like some great detail
Mm,
to like how he describes the whole world of that place. Like, I mean, after the first book, I think it deviates quite a lot, like in terms of what the games do. But yeah, that first book is pretty tight with what the first game does, and sets
nice.
that still out nicely. Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, we had a couple of big hitters as well, like Gears of War E-Day got shown again. Um, Marcus Phoenix looked really weird in civilian clothing.
That
Not,
was my only takeaway from that. I guess I'm excited for it, but
yeah, it's like I was trying to sort of pick it. It's like when you had like a really popular cartoon and it has a very particular art style, and then they reboot it with like an edgier one or a different
Mm.
style, but they keep the heads the same or something. Like, and it kind of felt like that. And it's like, no, you don't look right wearing a suede jacket. You need to get. You need to- I mean, it looks like Gears, which is
Mhm.
fine, I guess. Like more Gears, more stuff. I mean, going back to Emergence Day works fine. Yeah, like but they've inexplicably at the last minute made it a console exclusive to Xbox, which is
Mm.
yeah. I mean, the two games they chose for that new exclusive run were baffling to say the least. But
Yeah.
hey, like I'm sure there'll be a new strategy, a new plan before you know it.
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
that's the thing. Like I've enjoyed those games. I think I stopped playing about Gears 4 maybe. But at the same time, like, yeah, I mean, it's more Gears. I'll take more Gears, but I didn't necessarily see anything that was like amazing. It's kind of like how I felt about the brief looks that we've seen at like the next COD, where it's just like it's all
yeah,
focused on the movement, which is going to feed into multiplayer, which is going to be the draw from a majority of people. And I'm only interested in the single player component of it. So it's just like, yeah, okay. Well, I'm sure that it'll work more often than it doesn't, but at the same time, like, there's nothing about that is like putting it necessarily at the top of my list. But
yeah.
I'll get around to it.
I think we also finally got to see State of Decay. The 3 was
Yeah.
happening. Again, another one that's kind of changed tone slightly. It seems to be a bit more like aggressive in terms of the gameplay, like
Mm.
not quite sedate. Which yeah, I don't know. I mean, I kind of prefer because like if I have my open world zombie survival game of choice already, so I don't really need another one that's exactly like it. So the more arcadey it gets, the better, I guess. Yeah, I mean, it just again, it's not really standing out. I suppose that series never really has, but yeah, it's like I'm a sucker for zombie apocalypse
Mm.
survival games, so like I will probably play it, especially as it is multi-format as well. So it'll be first time it's on PlayStation
There
formats as
you go.
well. Um, we saw the Motion Twins Castlevania
Mm.
Belmont's Curse, which like I'm really looking forward to because Dead Cells was fucking amazing, and I
Yeah.
think the sort of Castlevania DLC they did for that as well was great. But yeah, just much like that 2D sort of Prince of Persia game that came out a couple of years ago, which was like
Mm.
fantastic, but like nobody got around to it. Really, it seemed like it undersold, but that was great. So having a Castlevania game that feels like that Prince of Persia game felt like a classic sort of version of that idea, I'm fully on board with.
No, absolutely. Yeah, like you said, most people didn't get around to that Castlevania DLC, but to hear that they're going to be, at the helm of that now again is just like great, and getting it to be like a straight up one, I think will
Mm,
be really great, and hopefully get to send some people back to Dead Cells and then discovering that DLC, because that's the thing. Like I always feel so bad for studios that like cut their teeth, so to speak, on some DLC that's really great, but then only people that were already hardcore fans of whatever that game was, like, were the ones that actually played it. And I'm glad they got a new project, a new gig out of that. But at the same time, like, I wish that their work would be received by the masses, as it were. But
yeah,
maybe there's room for that now.
yeah. I had like a couple of others quickly, just to sort
Yeah.
of mention. 1666 Amsterdam looked
Mm.
quite good. So I think it was by former Assassin's Creed developers and kind of looks like that, but it has like a sort of folky horror sort of occult thing going on with it. There's a demo out, I believe, as well from that one, but I'll have to see if it works well on Steam Deck with that. But that looked good. Lost Wild came in and did
Mm.
the whole Jurassic Park survival horror thing. Again, we've got loads of those in development. None of them seem to be coming out. So, but that one is by published by Annapurna, so
Mm.
got a chance, I guess. But I, we were bemoaning the idea that nothing is really coming out around the time of Grand Theft Auto 6,
Mm.
and then there is a game coming out in November now that I'm like, shit, I might want that more. Like, which was the Godzilla Destroy All Monsters remastered.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still like a real sucker for like the 2014 Godzilla like arena battle game, which it's middling to the nth degree, but it got that classic Godzilla like city smashing stuff for me in so many ways. I've played it. It's probably my favorite 5 out of 10 game. Like in terms of like, I can unapologetically say that it is a 5 out of 10 game. But
Right.
yeah, but to get one that's actually good, like, and have it come back and it'll have online play, and yeah, like it's out I think a couple of weeks before GTA 6. So like, yep, absolutely. I mean, Atari have really kind of turned around and been like good at this whole preservation thing and like restoration thing. So you know, considering some of the abysmal things that went on in recent years with them, like wow, yeah, I'm impressed to say stuff like that getting put out there. You know, I never expected. So especially with a license, but yeah, great.
And that was one of those games that I remember growing up, anybody's house that I ever went to, they always had a copy of that, but it just was one of those things that eluded me. And now naturally there's no way to play it. So getting to kind of be able to have this revisionist history bit for me where I'm like, oh, cool, now I'll have a way to actually play it. But I think that going into it with that mindset of like, yeah, this was an instrumental game for so many people, even if maybe it wasn't like the best game actually, I think is going to be the right mindset to go into it with for the first time. So I'm equally excited for it, even if I don't have the same kind of like history with it.
That's fair enough. Was there anything else you sort of wanted to bring?
No, I think for me that mostly covered it. State of Decay 3, I don't have anything to say other than like I think I'm finally going to actually play a State of Decay game. I just have never really gotten around to that series and whatnot, and I'd just be interested to like play the most recent rendition of it. Even if maybe I'm not the biggest multiplayer gamer, I'm still interested to see like what kinds of implementations have been sort of modified to gameplay over the years and whatnot. Because I've always been aware of it, just never gotten around to it. So this maybe will be the version that I check out.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I think there's stuff that was kind of already announced beforehand that just got trailers, but otherwise, yeah, there's all sorts of things. But we've gone on long enough, I think.
Yeah, and like we've said, if anything kind of slips through the ether that we missed or whatnot, or gets announced after this goes live, we can always revisit that and whatnot. And just kind of like update our running tally of games that we need to cover, which further gives us senses of joy to thought of playing it, but at the same time, sense of anxiety, just like coverage and stuff like that. But yeah, no, we've covered a good deal of games, and I think that there's going to be no shortage of things to play on the horizon, whether it's this year or slated for next year. But we'll certainly be making time for majority of what we've chatted about today, hopefully in the near future. But yeah, if that's going to do it for our chat this week on upcoming and recent horror announcements. And as always, my friend, it's a pleasure chatting horror with you for Safe Room.
Okay, my man. Till the next time.
Thank you for listening to this week's main feed episode of Safe Room. If you've enjoyed our horrifying discussions, please take a moment to rate and review the show on your preferred podcast platform, as this helps us immensely in ensuring that the show continues to grow. For any and all show updates and additional content, you can follow Safe Room on all of our socials, which are linked in the episode notes, at SafeRoomPod. And finally, you can send any and all emails to saferoompod@gmail.com. Thank you again for listening, and we'll see you guys next time.